Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter.
Pop Max is here, watch us step up to the floor, cause we're the kind of channel who demands a little more.
Hi there guys, it's Adam Martin here and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about Pop Max. Now, just for a bit of context, if you are someone who grew up in the UK around the early 2000s, then the Pop brand of TV channels should be no stranger to you. This has gone on to achieve some sort of, not cult, but it's become like a firm favourite for that generation who grew up with it, and I definitely include myself within that. From say 2004 to 2008, I would watch Pop religiously when I could. It would often be on holiday because back in the day it wasn't on Freeview, it wasn't easily accessible. It'd only be when I'd go places that had like Sky, for example, where I'd be able to access it. And it had a great slate of shows. Now the brand still continues today in the 2020s. It has changed wildly in that time. And I'd actually argue, in terms of adaptation to the new landscape of television, one that focuses on more of a streaming model, less of a traditional scheduled approach, Pop is one of the brands that has sort of adapted and evolved with this. It's one of the best, to be honest. Now, last year, the big talk around Pop was about its preschool strand, the Tiny Pop strand. This had been something that had existed for 20 years. It had been, again, something that many people had grown up with, whether that was them themselves in their preschool years or with younger siblings, stuff like that. And it was announced that Channel Pop was waving us goodbye on the Freeview strand anyway, and indeed it was. It has returned in some form. It's back on some satellite availabilities, like again with Sky, and I think it's still accessible via the Pop Player, which is the streaming offering which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the focus of today's video is about Pop Max. Now, if that's one you're not as familiar with, don't worry, I was among this myself. This launched at a time where I guess I'd grown out of Pop a little bit. I'd moved on to other channels. It launched in 2008, but not under the Pop Max name. It was actually called Kicks to begin with, which of course sounds just as cool and edgy and, you know, predictably cringe as most 2000s channels sounded back then that were after that demographic. So it launched as Kicks, a part of the Pop brand, or within that Pop family, if you like. And originally it was aiming for, I guess, the young boys market, I guess, sort of between 6 to 10, 12-year-olds, you could say. That was what they were going for, with shows that I guess the TV execs back then predictably thought would appeal to boys. Even by the late 2000s, this sort of advertising, this sort of marketing, this sort of branding of channels was still going on. It may seem like a very outdated concept now, but it was still firmly rooted. I mean, Pop as a brand had a channel called Pop Girl at one point, and this was as late as, 2007. Kicks survived as that for quite a while. It wasn't until the mid to late 2010s, 2017 in fact, where it became Pop Max. The schedules pretty much remained the same, but this was now the new branding, I guess, to bring it in more in line with the Pop brand, and it became part of the Pop Player in the early 2020s, and it's remained sort of stable ever since. Although on the 22nd of April, which is coincidentally the day I'm recording this, it says that the channel has indeed closed, after being on the air in some form or another for nearly 17 years. But the programming will remain available through the Pop Player app. But that's what we're going to get into now. There is an article here from RXTV which says Sky confirms the removal of the children's channel. So Sky has confirmed the removal of Pop Max, a free channel originally dedicated to action-packed children's animation. It follows wider changes to the Pop family of children's channels across TV platforms in the past year, and is a decision made by the channel's owner, Narrative Entertainment. On Tuesday the 22nd of April, again today, the day I'm recording this, Pop Max will cease broadcasting on the satellite channel 615 and Sky Glass/Stream channel 215 or 216 in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. There's going to be no replacement for the channel. And I think when these sorts of channels close, particularly ones aimed at children, because I'd still maintain they are so important to have on TV and be accessible. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I think the question is what's going to replace it, what's going to take over. And it seems in this case, quite starkly, we aren't going to get one. Sister channel Tiny Pop moves to fill the gap on the Sky satellite channel guide, moving from 618 to 615, and in turn Pop Plus 1 moves from 619 to 618, whilst Tiny Pop Plus 1 moves from 629 to 619. That's a lot of numbers there. The thing about time shift channels, like the Plus 1 stuff, whilst they are still going on, I really think in this day and age when we have streaming services and ways where people can watch what they want whenever they want, why do we still have time shift channels? That might be a video in itself, but why are time shift channels still necessarily relevant? But yeah, just surprising that we still have them for Pop. Pop Max was originally devised as a channel targeting young boys, as I said before, aged 6 to 9, with action cartoons such as Pokemon, Power Rangers. More recently, and until its closure on Tuesday morning, it's been screening back-to-back episodes of Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug, and Cat Noir. Well, that title sounds thrilling. Of course, that's not something for me. You might know someone who adores this stuff. The channel was originally available to viewers in parts of the UK via Freeview until December 2024, when it was moved without notice, but they can still continue to watch shows online via the Pop Player. And more channels are doing this, where they're being removed from Freeview, which, need I remind you, is still the most accessible way millions of people around the UK watch television, and particularly for parents who want to give their kids something to watch that is both reliable, safe, trustworthy. Pop falls into that category, as do the bigger names such as CBBC and, before it closed, CITV. So it's been off Freeview for some time, all of 2025 so far, but as it says via the Pop Player, which is the streaming offering, you can still access the content. But it seems that the Pop Max branding, for want of a better word, is well and truly gone or going. It's going to be phased out, which I guess for anyone who has nostalgia for that era is going to be a bit sad. In terms of the move to streaming, it says it follows a big year of change for the Pop channels as Owner Narrative Entertainment navigates changes to the way younger viewers access content. In March of 2024, Narrative announced it would be switching preschool kids channel Tiny Pop to online platforms only. That was partially reversed months later, with Tiny Pop regaining a regular broadcast slot on Sky Satellite. So this is the thing, whilst Tiny Pop as branding still does exist and you can still find it in places, it is no longer available on traditional Freeview. What I mean is TV without an internet connection. If you don't have internet or if your Wi-Fi's down, you will not be able to access Tiny Pop in that way. You have to access it via the Pop Player, which is a streaming channel which requires internet, etc., etc. I guess if you have satellite still, then it is, Tiny Pop is back there. And it was always interesting they sort of reversed that. It didn't come as big of a surprise to me as to maybe some others, because I've always said preschool channels occupy a very important and also a very special place on the UK airwaves. Take CBeebies, for example, the BBC's preschool offering. When it was announced some years ago that CBBC, the main children's channel, was eventually going to move to an online-based only platform, which hasn't happened yet, need I remind you, but is supposedly coming, they made no mention that CBeebies was going to go the same way. In fact, I believe they doubled down and said CBeebies is going to remain as a traditional TV channel. It, of course, is going to have an online presence. It has its own website. You can access it via the iPlayer, of course. But they maintained that CBeebies would be maintained as a traditional TV channel. And why? Well, again, preschool content is really important for kids as they're developing. And I think for parents, for families, you need that content to be as accessible as possible. And yes, most households now have an internet connection, but I'd still maintain that not all households have a really, true reliable internet connection, or necessarily fast. That might be depending on your financial situation. That might be dependent on just the sheer fact of where you live and how good your broadband signal is. But preschool content, like I say, is this really important area of television. So the fact that they reversed the decision on Tiny Pop to some degree doesn't strike me as too much. I'd imagine a lot of parents probably got in touch. But yeah, for that particular channel to get a reprieve made sense. Back to Pop Max, or the Pop brand in general. It launched the streaming channel Pop Up, which is a constantly evolving channel dedicated to a particular children's show or genre for specific periods of time. Now, I hadn't heard of Pop Up specifically. It had launched sometime last year, And just to give a little description of Pop-Up, it says it's going to showcase takeovers of popular children's shows, giving them back-to-back episodes of their favourites. And its launch follows the migration of sister channel Tiny Pop from traditional streaming platforms back in March. And the streaming-only status of Pop-Up, again, you can't access this in a traditional sense, reflects the shift towards streaming among younger audiences. It's a fast channel. It's a form of a fast channel. And these have been growing in popularity. And again, with children who are becoming more and more adept with technology and being able to access the internet at their leisure, again, I think from Narrative Entertainment, the owners of the Pop brand, this makes a lot of sense. Why would you add a new channel to your brand that is exclusively in that traditional, scheduled, linear way? Why not advertise it as something that is more open, more internet-based, something that children, the demographic you're going for, understand and will get behind? On Freeview, Narrative replaced its traditional broadcast channels with streaming services. This means they're only available on compatible internet-connected TVs. Streaming versions of Pop and Tiny Pop, as accessed through Freeview, follow a different schedule to the traditional broadcast copy of the channel, which is available on Sky. The company also dropped distribution of its channels on FreeSat. Oh, poor old FreeSat. Blow after blow for FreeSat. I'm sorry if you're a FreeSat user, because these blows seem to keep coming. So, case in point there, you now need a compatible internet-connected TV to access the Pop channels via Freeview, via the Pop player, as it laid out there. Now, just a case in point, this might not necessarily be an option to everyone, or you might have to work around alternatives. For example, just myself in the current house I'm in, the TV I have, it's an older TV. It's not necessarily, it has internet capabilities, but it's not internet connected in the modern way that most people are familiar with, shall we say. It's not like got Freely built in, for example. It's not a smart TV in the sense that it just has that internet connectivity right out the gate. So when I want to watch anything, say stuff on the BBC, stuff on ITV, Channel 4, I use my PlayStation 4, which of course utilizes apps for these services where I can watch the programs I want to watch, including live TV. And yes, I pay my TV license. But I don't know right off the bat, I'd have to check. Is the Pop Player available on PlayStation? Okay, after a quick search, yes, the Pop Player is available on the various PlayStation consoles. So for some people, maybe who have older TVs, you'd then have to use a gateway system, like a PlayStation or an Xbox or something similar, to access the Pop Player. Now, that is available to a lot of people, but again, games consoles, no matter how old they are an expense. And if you can't necessarily afford that, and you have an older TV that is more reliant on traditional Freeview, then your access to the Pop stuff is severely limited, which if you have kids might be a potential blow. It's this great period of transition in TV where I understand these companies want to move to a more online, a more streaming-based model that both gives them and audiences freedom to tune into what they want when they want. But we're still at this point, I think, where there are large swaths of the country that are just not equipped for that through no fault of their own. Again, like I said, whether financial or circumstantial, the whole UK is not ready yet for this transition and may not be ready yet for quite a long period of time. It's still sort of an open-ended thing. And I mean, looking at the children's channels on Freeview, for example, or the ones that are accessible to my address anyway, aside from the ones I've never heard of, like I've never heard of the Ketchup channels or Yars, which sounds horrific. But, the Pop channels are there. Pop, Tiny Pop, Pop-Up, and of course the Pop Player. But when you go on these, it sort of identifies that, you still need to use internet services in some way to access them. Now, the Pop Player, we had a little look at this last time. It's very much in line with a lot of the other streaming services, as you might expect. Advertising, all of its shows, it's all very bright and colourful with the, just the windows into the different programs, as you will. You can have a look at them there, some of the stuff that's on offer. It's a very simple website, I'll give it that. I don't know if it's the same on the telly. You can have a look at all of the shows. It offers literally all of them, which it seems to be a lot of animation and a decent amount of anime as well. Always good to see that. Very limited from the look of it live action stuff. There's the Investigators there. That's a live action. Power Rangers Dino Fury, which used to be a Netflix exclusive because I believe they co-funded that, was it? But that's on there. And there's the apps tab as well, which just says you can pretty much watch it on all your devices with all the different software available there. And you can even see on the screenshots, the layout is indeed very, very similar. There's a tab for competitions, supposedly, shows, a live stream, your favorites, the different channels there. Although I guess PopMax is still there. You can see on the top right, but I don't know whether that's still going to show up now after today, now that the branding has supposedly wound down. So, in retrospect, the Pop brand has lost another one of its strands, seemingly more definitively than compared to Tiny Pop last year. Now, full disclaimer, like I said before, I personally have no real affiliation to PopMax. This is not a channel that I grew up with. This is not one that I have watched since. I was, I guess, around at the wrong time for it. But like most channels, there will be audiences out there, and you very well might be one of them, that remember PopMax, or Kicks as it formerly was, from 2008 to 2017. You may remember tuning into this channel, tuning into some of your favorites, some true classics, whether it be animation, anime, live action, whatever it was. You may have very fond memories of this channel and be sad to see it bite the dust. And in terms of children's TV in the UK as a whole, it is sadly, no matter how small of a footnote it might be, it is another blow to the kids industry at large, which, yes, it is going more streaming. And like I said, I reflect that companies want to go that way. Considering there is also a lot of stuff out there that kids have access to and can watch that isn't really suitable for them, it's not appropriate, it's not going to help them, it may not even entertain them. The loss of another strand of something that's a bit more reliable, offering stuff that's a bit more safe and appropriate, is a blow. You know, really, on UK TV now, it's the Pop brand, the ones that are left, and CBBC that are sort of carrying the mantle forward. And even little by little, they're being dismantled. I believe, like CBBC, for example, live presenter links aren't a thing anymore, or they are being phased out. I might be holding on to something, you know, that I grew up with, that a lot of us are nostalgic for. And we do have to accept that things change and things evolve. But I think when it's at the detriment of not only the children's TV industry, the TV industry at large, but the audience themselves, the children watching, then that is a shame. But that is all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like on it. It does help us out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Were you someone who grew up with PopMax? Do you have fond memories of it? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. Subscribe as well if you're brand new. We'd love to have you aboard. Keep the channel growing. And until the next video, I will see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show. And a special thank you to Macra, Sean Knock, Dord Khan, Liam Domain, AJ Mac 200017, Deck, Jen, Traffy, Tim Ripley, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Marnanel Thurman, 40-something Manchild, Jerry Ralph, John McLeod, James Wallace, Ben, Stephen Oliver, Tegan, Shadowfiend 180X, Swan Bronson, Adam Gamer, Fonzie Daz, Seraphic Euphoria, Real Random, Matthew Elliff, Pigeon's House, and Shah H, our AMTV staff members.